Hey everybody, Charles here. Before we hop into today's content, GMAT Ninja, we kind of misnamed ourselves 15 plus years ago. In addition to doing GMAT tutoring, we also offer MBA admissions consulting. We have since 2008, GRE tutoring, executive assessment tutoring. More importantly, if you watch this video and you're looking for help on your applications and the guys in the video don't quite do it for you, please let us know. We are more than happy to refer you to a bunch of our favorite admissions consultants. We'll give you a list of our favorites at a bunch of companies, not just ours. All you have to do, head over to gmatninja.com or click on the link in the video description, fill out the little contact form there, and we'll send you a bunch of our favorites. Why do we do this? We want to make sure that you end up in the best possible hands. A lot of what we do is help people, both our students and our viewers, do better on the GMAT and GRE. If you've put in all that hard work, we want to make sure that you hire the best admissions consultant for you. A lot of that's about fit. We'll give you some options. No funny business, not going to sell your email, not going to try to sell you anything. Just fill out that form. We'll give you our honest best recommendations, and that's it. All right, enjoy the video today. Hey everybody, Charles with GMAT Ninja Tutoring here. Today we're going to talk about that really tempting thing out there. You've seen ChatGPT, you've seen other AI models. Can you use AI to save your butt when you're writing MBA essays? Here today I've got James Boo, longtime admissions consultant here at GMAT Ninja since 2018. If you're not familiar with James's background, long history in a tech company. In addition to that, podcast producer, storyteller, documentary filmmaker, fantastic at helping your stories pop off the page. And the question is, hey, technology is getting better. And as you're that applicant who's looking at this stack of essays, maybe you're applying to 5 schools and going, how do I write all this stuff? Where do I start? Hey, can it do some of the work for you? Can it make your life easier? So James, let's start with this. One of the things that I hear people saying is, yeah, well, I could just kind of go to ChatGPT, punch in some details about my life, and it's going to spit out an essay that, maybe needs more work or whatever, but it's going to be the beginning of a really good quality essay, maybe something better than I could write myself. Is that realistic? Can AI give you a better quality essay than what you would produce working out on your own?
Before I answer that question, I'll say 2 things. One is that I'm also a big Star Trek fan. So if anybody wants to talk to the computer and just have it give you like a very insightful answers and all the data and all the things that you want to like save the ship, then I would say yes. But unfortunately, the big picture answer, to skip a little bit ahead and just give people the point that they really want to hear, is it doesn't work right now. What ChatGPT and similar kind of language models can do is it can write a very mediocre essay extremely fast. What it can't do is it can't see inside your head, and therefore it can't really deliver the kinds of deeply personal stories that actually would help you stand out in a sea of candidates. And it just comes down to that. We'll talk about all of these details, and we can look at this in a number of angles, but until these tools can really link to our brain, which again, I would welcome in an instant, depending on who's controlling the technology, it just can't access the things. And so now going back to your question, Charles, getting a really great first draft. Really important to say first off, that first draft, writing it is just, it sucks. It's really terrible. It's a difficult task to do, and that's where people feel despair and are looking for anything that could help them, which I understand. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Like, as a writer, I can say it. As an editor, I can say it. It is meant to be a very difficult part of the process. And when we talk about what makes a first good draft, particularly for this application, right? You have an MBA reader audience. You're trying to make your case, and you're trying to make yourself very memorable and distinct as a leadership candidate. What does that first draft need? And how does ChatGPT work? Can it meet those needs? So in a very reductive short nutshell, right, ChatGPT is scraping information that you are feeding to it or that you're pointing it to online. And that's what's going to go into your first draft. What is missing here is you. And if you're trying to write an essay about yourself, where does that information come from, right? It's not going to come from the internet. Like, you can maybe give it your LinkedIn profile. You can feed it information, but this very quickly becomes a game of like, in order for the first draft to be any good, I have to come up with a bunch of interesting things about myself. Uh-oh, well, now I'm just writing the first draft. Why am I writing my first draft and feeding it to ChatGPT to get a different version of it back? And if you skip that step, if you skip the step of really thinking back on your career and thinking to yourself, like, what are the key moments? What are the big challenges? What are the big accomplishments? What are the building blocks of who I am as a leader? How did I get to be this person? And how can I summon these experiences and then convey them to the person? If you skip that, then ChatGPT has nothing to work with. And so you're going to get a terrible first draft. And it's not even about making it better. It's just empty. There's just nothing there. And then the more that you realize that and say, well, let me actually get those pieces, then you're just doing the work, which you should have done anyway, to be honest. So,
and James, just to be clear, when you say you've used the word, really terrible first draft, mediocre writing, what do you mean by that? Because I imagine that if I ask ChatGPT or some similar software, hey, go produce an article for me, go produce an essay for me, it's not going to make a lot of mistakes. Like it understands grammar. So when you say terrible and mediocre, what exactly do you mean by that?
What I guess to put it another way, I would repeat that word empty, right? What you'll get is something that looks like a really well-structured essay. It'll be something that's very well organized, which is important, right? I mean, we don't want to knock the capabilities of this technology. But like, what are you actually talking about? When it comes time to illustrate, right? When you just tell someone, or in this case, the bot, tell someone that you are a leader who really believes in the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, then what? What story are they telling? What example from your career are they going to give? And how memorable will that example be? How real will it feel to the reader? And therefore, how easy will it be for them to get invested, right, in what you've experienced? If ChatGPT is only drawing on the very surface level materials available through, say, your resume or just publicly available information about you online, I don't know about you, but if I look online for information about myself, I don't see the most important experiences of my life. Like, unless you're a very prolific blogger who is constantly documenting the minute details of like your latest project at work, and how you got that promotion and et cetera, and how you made this decision to jump to a different role. Where does that stuff come from? If it's not immediately accessible to the technology that's helping you, then it's got to come from you. And at that point, you're just now doing the work anyway, and you're gonna be generating those materials yourself. So why not just cut out the middleman and go for it?
So James, obviously you are a human being. You're not a bot, despite being a Star Trek fan. So you want people to work with you. You believe in kind of the human touch and admissions. Let me ask you this: Have you tried punching stuff in? Have you tried having ChatGPT write essays for you? And I imagine that it's like anything else on the internet where, or any other sort of software application, garbage in, garbage out. Couldn't it be the case that if you tell ChatGPT a fair amount about you, without actually writing the essay yourself, that there's some amount you could punch in there and say, hey, write a vivid, sexy story about my leadership when I was in a tech company. Have you tried that? And does it produce something that is way off when you ask it for that?
Yeah, I have tried this actually, because I was very curious too. I just want to see like what happens.
The technology is so cool. To be fair, like the technology is so cool that.
Well, I mean, and this is the thing, right? It's a robust technology that has a lot of applications. I had a gaming friend of mine, and I use it to map out strategies for the card game decks we were building and do a lot of math, right? So it's like we set up situations where it's like, okay, if I have this many green cards and this many red cards, and I want to make sure I have a starting hand of this, like this is a great use of ChatGPT. And then show me your work, right? Show me how you got to that. Awesome. If you're writing, a poem in the style of Charles, who's your favorite poem?
My favorite
poet.
My favorite poet.
You can say Dr. Seuss. It's okay.
I'll go with that. I got little kids. Dr. Seuss, sure.
Wonderful. Right? This is amazing. Now, what I did was I gave it my full CV, and this is something that I have already actually put a lot of work into. So it's not like garbage. It's quality material. It's what I would send into an MBA program. It's what I would send to a job prospective hiring manager, right? And then I gave it the Stanford prompt, which is in the process of changing, but I gave him the prompt. What matters to you most and why? And then I said, I'm applying to, you're trying to apply to the Stanford MBA full-time program. Here's the essay prompt. Here is your CV. Can you write an essay in this word limit, right? Here's just one paragraph. I actually pulled it up here that I got back. At Newton Inc., where I progressed from managing editorial services to directing content integration, I witnessed firsthand the transformative power of innovation in education technology. I led a team that evolved from local operations analysts to global client-facing consultants, significantly reducing project costs through streamlined operations and strategic simplification. This experience underscored my belief that innovation, when guided by a commitment to equity, can democratize access to education and empower diverse communities worldwide. Did you learn anything about me from that?
That was a lot of syllables. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, kind of hard to read, hard to listen to a little bit, because it's thick with nice sounding words that people like to put into sort of formal writing. But it's not personal at all. Like, what does it mean when you say commitment to diversity in that context? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like, this is something in journalism we talk about. It's like, or in the film industry, right? Anytime there is a dumb character, a simpleton character in Hollywood, a lot of times there'll be this bias where they have a Southern accent for some reason. So it's like a Hollywood scriptwriter's idea of what a dumb person is someone who's from the South for some reason, which makes no sense.
Southern U.S., to be clear, for international listeners.
And in this case, you have this. It's almost like this is a quick and dirty imitation of what someone thinks a smart person sounds like, and like an impressive business candidate sounds like. And it actually kind of is, right? You got all the right buzzwords, but I'll give you like basically 2 points about this to break it down. The first is that repeating, it says nothing about me. Does anyone remember who I am out of this? It could be describing anybody. And number two, there's just too much here. It's really just taking a bunch of buzzwords, cramming them all together, and when it's trying to connect gaps, it gets more buzzwords. I didn't ever say democratize access to education and empower diverse communities worldwide. Like, that's something where it saw the name of the company, it probably accessed some marketing material from the company 10 years ago, and it's connecting dots in ways that they don't make any sense. And more importantly, these buzzwords and these kinds of compressed, dense bombs of business buzzwords are not stories. They don't say, like, here's one thing I experienced in my career, right? Like, an alternative here would be, if I wanted to talk about this actual time in my professional life, I would talk about quitting. I would talk about, like, hey, I ended my 8-year career at this edtech startup, which raised over $500 million. And I quit by becoming the only manager in the company who dissolved his own team and then left.
Okay, now I want to read that.
So, yeah, we don't have to go through the whole story, but like, if you just lead with that sentence, it's not buzzwords. It's a real thing that happened, and it's something that also I'd be surprised if you heard that from someone else who's applying.
And that's the thing about something like ChatGPT is it's probably pulling successful Stanford essays from the internet. It's probably part of what it's integrating into its thought process to write your draft, and that's not something that very many people have written. And that's what you want. You want something that has not been written very often before, that is deeply personal to you, and that's the opposite of what ChatGPT is going for. Is that fair?
It's the opposite of just what it has access to, right? And that's kind of like, what data is it working from? If the tool starts to get access to better data, if we actually had an entire bank of successful Stanford essays from graduates, people who had been accepted and then graduated and then were wildly successful in their careers, I'd take a second look at that and I'd be curious about it. But what's missing from that? You are still missing. Are you any of these people? Maybe you then could tell the computer, hey, let's please narrow it down to people who are going for the same kind of job that I'm going for you. Like, this is for me to say, it's not that technology's bad and like I'm better. It's that it's important to think about, what is the tool actually doing for you? And does it have what it needs to be successful? If it does not, then question using it. And I think that there's still an unfortunate truth with writing, where the vast majority of the difficulty isn't the writing. It's the thinking, it's the remembering, it's the prioritizing. There's so many great things about your journey. What's the one thing that is going to get you the furthest when you're being presented to a human reader?
So James, with that in mind, let's say that, so we've kind of established the severe limitations of the technology at this point, 2024 as we film this, the limitations of the technology in drafting a quality essay for you. Okay, but what if you've already kind of done that work of saying, okay, what sort of story do I want to tell? I've done that painful work of looking at a blank piece of paper and eventually turning that into something that's my first draft, second draft, whatever. Could I at least save time by going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, polish this up for me. Turn my ideas and my personal stories into an essay that just reads better. Is that something that you can use the technology for right now?
You can't. I think it's fair to say that you actually can. The question is, like you said, are you saving time? I don't know. I think it's not certainly worth trying if you have some anxiety, right, about like smoothing things out, about making things flow well. Give it a try. But here's the problem. You need to become then an editor. And what is an editor? An editor is someone who's really good at writing. And so like, what are we asking ourselves to do? And you start to mutate towards becoming a prompt writer, which is okay. You try to get the most out of the tool by getting better at writing prompts of how you want it to polish your essay. But where do those criteria come from? You're going to be sinking time into trying to get that right. It's just a different skill you're spending more time on. Number two, you have to check everything that comes out because sometimes it just won't make sense. That thing that I was calling back to, that example that I gave, that was when I just fed it my resume. And it was taking my own words and twisting and adding things that just don't belong there and are not me. And so can you check the work? And do you have the skill for that? If you can, sure. But I think the whole problem statement here was, I don't. I don't know how to polish my own essay. And often I'll be perfectly honest if I'm consulting with someone, right? My biggest bang for buck with people is I help them really with the strategy and that first really hard lift of like, what are you trying to bring to the table for your first draft? And then how do you make that an effective delivery? At a certain point, when you get towards the end, I actually tell a lot of students, like, you shouldn't pay me anymore. Like, you should be bouncing this across other friends who know you better and can tell you, hey, does this sound like you? Right? Did this get away from us? Right? We need to get these fundamentals right, and that's great use of having a professional help you. But then at a certain point, just get a friend who really knows you well and knows what you sound like and knows how you like to communicate your own personality. And that's the person I think who's best qualified, right, to help you with these polishing steps. Because it's not about this median level of like a perfect, smart sounding business person. Right. It's about what makes you sound most like you and not like someone else. And readers can tell.
Well, and I suppose a different dimension of that polishing is just getting the writing correct. So what if you're a non-native English speaker and you're just uncomfortable with your writing, you're worried that it sounds stilted, you're worried that you're making mistakes. So now we're kind of narrowing into a really kind of niche little function. Do you think that the AI tools work well for that? If you're just trying to make it sound less non-native or sound more mistake-free, could you do that?
Yeah, we work with a lot of global students here, and so it's a natural reach. This is the thing I'm most sympathetic to, because the world of business is global, and English is kind of still a dominant language in this world. So naturally, if it's not your native language, even though you've achieved quite a bit by getting to the point where you can apply for an MBA in a language that's not your own, to be born into, yeah, it makes sense, right? Can I use it to polish? So here are some important questions to stop and ask yourself, though. Number one is, what happens when they say, great essay, come in for an interview? And then you walk in and you start talking. And the person that they hear talking to them doesn't sound at all like the person who wrote the essay. Right. I think to put it in a more encouraging way, right? If your reader is looking at the essay and it's obvious from your name, your resume, and your essay that this is not your first language, but like everything you're saying makes perfect sense, right? Your grammar's good, and you just have some mistakes here and there because you're not a native English. No one is going to reject you for that.
Or to be clear, James, maybe not mistakes where you have a subject-verb agreement problem. Exactly. Probably bad. That shows you didn't take care in it. But if it's something that sounds a little bit stilted, or it sounds like you're writing with an accent, I think you're suggesting that is totally fine as long as it doesn't hinder the comprehensibility of the essay. And you might even argue it helps because we start to see a three-dimensional person. This sounds like somebody from Bolivia, just to pick on an old friend of mine that has an MBA. I would want his essays to sound like he's from Bolivia a little bit because he has an accent.
Yeah. And I would say two things. Number one, spell checking is still pretty good technology. Grammar
check.
Checks,
you bet.
Yeah, you got to do that stuff. And it's readily available. And it won't change who you are. It won't change your accent, so to speak. Second, business schools are looking to shape the world. They're not looking to shape the United States and only the certain segments of the world, right? So when you look at the class of people going in, they are coming from everywhere. Right. And that's expected. And you should be celebrated for writing a very solid essay that doesn't have any grammatical mistakes and conveys your vision, and it's still you. Because guess what? Going to graduate school and being a business leader in a language that isn't the one you were born speaking is very impressive.
So we're kind of saying, all right, maybe a little bit in that phase of making sure your grammar is basically correct. Be careful not to let it take away your natural voice. Nothing wrong with having a bit of an accent when you write. But I guess the question a lot of people ask is, well, will this get better? I mean, the technology is developing so quickly. And if we're saying, well, it's not really going to write that first draft for you in a way that's very helpful, it's not going to do a lot of polishing in a way that's helpful, well, isn't this going to get better? What if I try it in 6 months or a year? Isn't it likely that this technology is going to be able to solve some of those problems fairly quickly at this pace?
See you in a year. We'll find out. No, it's a fair question. It's a fair question to ask. But being practically minded, when are you trying to apply? Is the most important question. Can it help you now? But all that said, I think a good way to think about this is we've broken down some of the ways that this technology works right now. And so if you're hopeful for a future where this technology will be better performing and better for the use case of writing an application essay, right, for an MBA reader, then hopefully now you have the tools to make that call, right? What do you want it to be better at doing? That's what you have to watch out for. Is it going to be better at helping you fish out these seminal experiences that shaped you into a leader and a great candidate for business school? I think you should be able to answer that question, right? Because once you dig into how it really works and test it out yourself to see what we're talking about, you're going to see where it falls apart, and then it'll be easy not just to kind of blindly trust that version 6 or sorry, I don't know what version they're on, but we can't just blindly accept technology as magic. I think that this also goes to being an insightful leader and having an analytical mind, right? Being able to ask the right questions about what does this technology really do, what feeds it, and then what gives it an value add versus something else that actually isn't intended for this use case. You're going to have to do that as a business leader as well. So I think that question is fair to hold, but it's much more important to be able to answer for the specific goal you're trying to achieve. In this case, hopefully we've given you enough of a tour, right, of its shortcomings in the current day that you can make that assessment anytime in the future.
And we don't necessarily want to spend a ton of time saying, hey, what should you do instead? We've got plenty of videos, plenty of content on that. But I guess in brief, if you're not going to use ChatGPT and you're tempted and you really are at that stuck moment of, oh God, how do I produce this first draft? I guess in brief, how do you get unstuck if ChatGPT can't do that for you? How do you get unstuck and get that first draft rolling?
Yeah, I want to go back to something we said early on in this conversation, which is just acknowledging that first draft really sucks. It really is terrible to write a first draft of anything.
James, I don't know if you're doing a similar trick. I feel like we've had this conversation at some point over the 15 or so years we've known each other. Whenever I'm writing something, it could be anything. It could be a blog post, could be a new GMAT problem set. I've dabbled in fiction and memoir writing back in the day. I always write in huge letters, crappy first draft at the top of the page, just so I don't put pressure on myself. And I've probably written more words than almost anybody watching this over the last 20 some odd years. And my first drafts still suck every single time. And I just embrace that from the start. I feel like you might do something similar in your real life, but
my first draft is just 3 pages of just bullets that most of them are terrible. And so but what I want to I take this into a useful kind of, piece of advice is that, yes, your first draft, number one, it's going to be really hard. Now, you don't have to sit against a blank page and bang your head against it. That's a terrible experience. One thing you can do to make it a much more pleasant experience is if you remember that the ultimate point of this exercise is to identify what experiences you've had that people really need to know in order to understand why you're such a great candidate. It's really painful to just sit there and dig them all out of yourself in your mind in silence with a blank page in front of you. So just flip that. Go talk to the people who know you, the people who work with you, the people who promoted you, the people who work for you. And start from this kind of practice of what I always say is we're building materials. We're looking for blocks and pieces of your career that for whatever reason, you don't exactly know why yet. You know they're important. You know they matter to you. You know that they shaped you. And at any point in time, you might realize, oh, that's why they're so important. This is the language I should use to say why this one promotion or this one project that I tanked was so meaningful to me. You don't know that now. All you know is that's important. So take that incident, go to someone who lived it with you or watched you do it, and say, hey, tell me about that time. Like, you tell me the story. What do you remember about that? And tell each other the story.
Hi, everybody. Me again. If you made it this far, odds are pretty good you're really serious about this whole MBA admissions thing. If that's the case, two quick things I want you to keep in mind. First of all, if you'd like the names of our very, very favorite admissions consultants at a number of different companies, not just our own, we've got a nice little contact form. You can fill out on our website, gmatninja.com, also available in the video description. Fill that out. We'll send you the names of a bunch of our favorite admissions consultants. No strings attached, nothing weird, not selling you anything, not going to sell your email, nothing. Just want to make sure you end up in the best possible hands. And second thing, if there's anything you'd like to see us address in these MBA admissions videos, please punch a comment in and we will do our best to film the stuff that you're interested in. And again, as always, if you like this, please hit that like button and please subscribe. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Things you can do verbally where you're just talking to people who were there. So it's not inside your head. It's not just like you versus a page. It's a positive exercise where you get to verbally generate a lot of these materials, and then you have to do the follow-up work of, okay, let me take notes on this. Let me just start to structure this, put it into a list. And then you have something you can start to carve a first draft out of. So talk to your fellow colleagues in your business. Talk to other people who've gotten their MBA, people who were going for the same kind of job and got it out of their MBA program. Talk to your family, and then start there. The same thing goes for, to put one more very concrete example, many schools want you to explain to them why you actually want to go to their school. So in a nutshell, this is kind of consolidating everything we've said. What would ChatGPT do? ChatGPT would scrape everything about that school, tell it back to them, tell them a bunch of things they already know in a buzzwordy way that never really paints a story of like, what's it going to be like to have Charles at our school? That's also the same thing an ineffective writer would do, to be honest, right? It's just replicating a sloppy pattern. But if you talk to 10 students from the school who are, some of them are nothing like you, some of them are following your exact path, they're going for the same post-MBA job, similar career goals, you're going to start to get some very tangible things that you can say about, okay, I not only know why I'm really good for this school, I know exactly what I could do when I'm there. And I can know because I talk to all these people and I'm actually now building relationships with them. You can convey all this in the essay, and that is going to make you stand out immensely. So, if your job is to tell a story, start with that, right? Look for the stories. Don't beat yourself over the head on getting it into the right format, right? For the essay writing task. Just start with the real life experience, and then start to translate that into words.
Excellent. James, thank you so much for doing this with us. James Boo, everybody, admissions consultant, real human, storyteller, podcast guy. Again, quick disclaimer, we're filming this in the middle of 2024. If you're watching this later and you're going, well, no, wait a minute, I did this really cool thing off of AI or off of ChatGPT, let us know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Technology is going to evolve. A lot of what we're saying is not going to age well in 3 years, 5 years, maybe even 6 months. Let us know about it. And if you learned something cool from it, by all means, let us know. We're always curious to hear more. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.